Lee's being the absolute necessity to appear for lunch and dinner on time. Did I just say we were free to plan our days? Well, even casual activities often require money, and to that end, as children of the Depression, we frequently devised strategies. I can recall two that were obvious and two that were more creative. One of the simplest was to meet the buses, which deposited visitors at the main gate with a wagon and to take their luggage down the wide brick walk to a rooming house or an inn. Each nickel, each dime, and the occasional quarter permitted us to buy nails and other materials for the construction of a raft made largely of driftwood. Little matter that the vessel floated 3 inches submerged, we were still able to pole our way along the Chautauqua Lake shore. Another summer, we tapped in a tiny way into the most influential experiment ever launched by John Vincent. 4 years after the first assembly, he announced in 1878 the creation of the Chautauqua Literary and Scientific Circle, CLSC, a program of guided reading which he stated would enrich leisure, better the understanding between the classes, and promote sympathy and culture. The plan predated by many decades the Book of the Month Club. The CLSC would provide 4 to 6 books, textbooks a year, including a newsletter with study helps. Local circles across the country were to discuss the books in the winter months, and then in the summer, after 4 years of study, they would come to Chautauqua for a graduation ceremony. That's where we showed up. Ever since 1882, Recognition Day has been held in August, and after a commencement address in the amphitheater, a list of speakers reads like a who's who: William Cullen Bryant, Jane Addams, Edward Everett Hale. The graduates with previous alumni classes would assemble under their class banner and process about a quarter of a mile to the Golden Gate, erected in a grove of evergreen trees before the open-sided Hall of Philosophy. Someone had to carry those banners. Enter we three with many other children, all slicked up and proud to earn 50 cents in service of higher learning. At the Golden Gate were created a phalanx, and graduates walked under the 4 arches labeled Faith, Science, Literature, and Art into the hall to receive their diplomas. Incidentally, among CLSC graduates were William Jennings Bryan and the son-in-law of Chautauqua founder Lewis Miller, Thomas Alva Edison, and his wife Mina Miller Edison, who had a cottage at Chautauqua. By 1918, this project in home reading was enrolling 300,000 students a year, 10,000 study circles, with 1/4 of those in villages under 500. Of course, only about 10% ever graduated, and far fewer ever traveled to receive their diplomas. I must confess, however, after receiving our 50 cents, we three raced to the pergola. It was a vine-covered refreshment arcade for ice cream, wall nettles, and glazed donuts. Now for the more imaginative fundraisers that we had. It was Ellen who had an idea. It was artistic and patriotic. How about making and selling some Queen Anne's lace bouquets? There was a whole field of the white weeds nearby, and if we dipped some of the blossoms in blue ink and others in red mercurochrome, voila, an Independence Day bouquet. No sooner said than done. Our temporary flower shop was set up on another red brick walk, and at a nickel a bunch, we were in business. A more complicated project was motivated by our favorite playground, Norton Hall. The opera house between our cottages. But before I describe our theatrical attempt, I must explain the dominant role that music plays in the Chautauqua program. Obviously, sacred music was prominent right from the very beginning. In fact, many church hymnals today include a popular hymn, Day is Dying in the West, which was composed in 1876 for a Chautauqua Vesper service. And Bishop Vincent included choral performances of religious works and performances by Ivy League choirs. The dedication of the amphitheater in 1893, which is, by the way, it's just finishing its final season to be replaced by a more comfortable and technological better structure. That dedication gave impetus, that amphitheater gave impetus to greater variations in all aspects of programming. This open-sided, roofed-over building had space for a 500-voice choir, seating for a large symphony orchestra, and 4,000 people. In 1909 and 1910, Walter Damrosch brought the New York Symphony Orchestra for a single concert. And then that symphony of musicians became in 1921 the Chautauqua Symphony, and directed by Albert Stessel of St. Louis. They played for 6 weeks from the 1920s into the 1940s. George Gershwin stayed at Chautauqua in 1925, where he composed his concerto in F. Have to go back. His concerto in F in one of the tiny music cottages, each of which had a grand piano for students who came to study music in the summer. Like children to the Pied Piper, we spent short periods listening to rehearsals in the amphitheater, and we stayed for longer periods of time at the dignified evening performances. But it was primarily opera that commanded our attention. In the 1930s, and the existing exciting dramas produced by the Cleveland Repertory Theater. Since Ellen and Stuart's brother helped maintain the grounds around Norton Hall, and an older sister was wardrobe mistress for the Chautauqua Opera Company, staffed by the Juilliard School of Music in New York, no one seemed to mind our access to the building when rehearsals were not taking place. We were fascinated. We knew every nook and cranny, from stage and orchestra pit to the dressing rooms, scenery fly galleries, and even the box office and the ladder to the roof. More intensely satisfying, however, was sitting, ever so quietly, watching the glowing stage with wonder, as stage director Alfredo Valenti and conductor Albert Stessel created scenes of passion and comedy with talented young American singers several of whom were on their way to the metropolitan contracts. And then, thrill of thrills, one summer, we and a few other children were recruited as members of the company to march singing on stage in Carmen and to surround Parpignol's cart of toys in La Boheme. Further, we were welcomed to swim at the Norton's private North Shore dock. It's the second dock in from the bottom. And so we were on modest speaking terms with the musicians and the actors who also swam at the same dock. They inspired us to create a theatrical experience one summer. We three called ourselves the Shadowbox Society. And we rigged up a taut sheet in the corridor of a rehearsal room in an adjoining building next to Norton Hall. We wrote 3 short scripts based on famous fables, switched on a very bright light, and performed 3 shadow plays with vocal interludes. Some 20 people, including some members of the opera company, attended. Pauline Pierce, contralto, even presented us with a bouquet. We gave our box office receipts of $1.30 to the CLSC, which, along with all of Chautauqua, had fallen on very bad times as the Depression deepened in 1935. Thus ended our specific money-raising strategies. The burden of resolving Chautauqua's debt fell upon its longest-serving president, Arthur Bester. He is the gentleman in the white suit. His companion is Alfred Landon, presidential candidate in 1936. Arthur Bester was administrator from 1914 to 1944. He was born, by the way, in Dixon, Illinois. And later he became a lecturer at Chicago University, Extension Division, the one created by William Rainey Harper. The debt was finally resolved in 1936 with a large money grant help from the Rockefeller Foundation. This cornucopia of lectures, sermons, music, and other educational events and entertainments captured audiences summer after summer. And not surprisingly, the entire Chautauqua movement, as it came to be called, swept across the country. In 1876, the Bayview Assembly was created at Petoskey, Michigan. By 1886, John Vincent had listed 38 other Chautauquas, including one called Old Salem, Chautauqua, near Petersburg, Illinois, and another one in Pontiac, Illinois. Most of these were annual meetings of 2 weeks length, and Vincent and Miller did not oppose the idea. In fact, they shared speakers with these temporary Chautauquas. Then the Lyceum Bureau of Boston, which had under contract a number of entertainers who traveled from city to city during the winter, arranged to have famous dignitaries and lesser-known performers travel on a summer Chautauqua circuit of a few days in length. In retrospect, a summer of cultural entertainments would not seem very attractive to the young, and at the conscious level, much of it wasn't. But in the end, it was the general artistic and intellectual ambiance that left its mark on us and continues to attract people to Chautauqua right now.